A sentencing hearing will be held in just a few hours for the man at the center of the Asheville police evidence room scandal.
News 13's Victoria Dunkel is live outside the police department. And Victoria, this could give the public answers to questions that cropped up 3 years ago.
That's exactly right. We're talking about the final step in the criminal case that is tied to this. And this is involving Lee Smith. He's the former Asheville police evidence room manager. He pled guilty to stealing or taking drugs from the evidence room. That plea actually came more than a year ago, and we're just now getting to the sentencing phase of this case. Let me walk you through what happened. In 2011, that's when things started not making sense, not adding up, and the police chief at that time discovered there was missing evidence in the evidence room. That triggered an investigation and an audit that the DA ordered, Ron Moore ordered, in 2011. We were talking about missing drugs, weapons, and other evidence from the room. The audit reviewed thousands of pieces of evidence, including the drugs, money, and guns that we were talking about. The evidence room manager at the time, Lee Smith, eventually resigned and pleaded guilty to stealing drugs. Today, his sentencing is set to take place, and DA Moore says that he will unseal the audit after the sentencing takes place. What we're going to find out and be following exactly for you is what is in the 15 volumes that make up that audit, and to determine if there is more evidence that was missing. Coming up in our next half hour, I will let you know if the district attorney believes that outside of the initial discovery of the missing pills, if there are any other cases that have been impacted, and if any outcomes of criminal cases have been altered because of this evidence room scandal. Reporting live in Asheville, Victoria Dunkel, News 13.
News 13's Victoria Dunkel is live outside the police department.
And Victoria, the former evidence room manager, heads to court today.
Absolutely. This is the sentencing phase for him. This all goes back to 2011 when there was a discovery made of some pills missing from an evidence file in the evidence room. That triggered an investigation. In the middle of that investigation, Lee Smith, the former evidence room manager, resigned, and eventually he pleaded guilty to stealing the drugs. Today, he will be sentenced on those charges. And what's significant about that is we have been waiting to gain access to the audit of the evidence room and all of its contents, which was ordered by the district attorney following the discovery of the missing pills in 2011. We started fighting to get access to that in 2012. And let me walk you through some of the specifics of this. So in 2011, they discovered the pills were missing. That triggered the investigation. Of course, News 13 and other news outlets tried to gain access to the information from the audit that was ordered. We were denied that access in a legal battle and told that we could not have access to this information until this case involving Lee Smith had been resolved. Now, District Attorney Ron Moore said Smith actually pleaded guilty to the charges in March of last year. He's not sure what has led to the delay in the sentencing, but it is set to happen today. And District Attorney Moore says that he will release and unseal the SBI audit of the evidence room. We can tell you that that is 15 volumes of information tied to that evidence room. And we can also tell you that he has not given us a specific release time for it. But we do know that after today's sentencing, we are expecting to gain access. And as soon as we get the information, you know News 13 is your source for getting it out to you as quickly as possible. Watch for updates throughout the morning on our Facebook and Twitter accounts. And of course, we'll be here as this all plays out in court today. Reporting live in Asheville, Victoria Dunkel, News 13.
Today, the former manager of the Asheville police evidence room will find out his sentence for stealing drugs.
News 13's Victoria Dunkel is live in Asheville. And Victoria, this also opens our access to the audit tied to that scandal.
That's right. District Attorney Ron Moore had sealed the audit results after this case had moved into a criminal case situation involving the evidence room manager. We're talking about Lee Smith. Now, Smith, in the middle of the investigation, resigned, and then he pleaded guilty to stealing drugs. Later today in court, he will learn his sentence for that plea. Now, let me walk you through the timeline here. This all started in 2011 when then Police Chief Bill Hogan discovered there was missing evidence from the evidence room. There was clearly, according to him, a tampering of evidence. Now, that led to the call from Ron Moore for an audit. And that was in 2011 as well. In 2012, News 13 and other media resources requested and went to court suing to gain access to the results of the audit. But Ron Moore had that result sealed because of the case against Smith, which had not yet gone to the sentencing phase. Smith did plead guilty to the charges back in March, a year ago in March, that is. And Ron Moore has told us that he is not sure why it has taken so long to reach the sentencing phase today, but that is what's going to happen today. And Moore has promised to unseal the results of that audit following the sentencing of this case. What he has not said is exactly what the time frame for that will be. Coming up in our next half hour, I'll let you know if the investigation that Moore called for has led him to believe that any other cases were put into jeopardy because of the tampering or missing evidence in the evidence room scandal. Reporting live in Asheville, Victoria Dunkel, News 13.
In just a few hours, the man at the center of the APD evidence room scandal learns his fate.
News 13's Victoria Dunkel is live outside the Asheville Police Department. And Victoria, the sentencing today also gives us access to that audit.
That's exactly right. So here's what's going to happen in just a little while in the courtroom. We're going to see the sentencing phase for the stolen drugs that were missing from the evidence room. That is involving Lee Smith. He was the former evidence room manager. He pleaded guilty to stealing drugs. This after the drugs turned up missing, and the then police chief reported this to DA Ron Moore, who ordered an audit of the evidence room. So the scandal erupted when the investigators found those pills tied to one case were missing. Then there was the evidence that was gathered and checked over by the audit, and that audit was sealed. Now, News 13 and several other media outlets did sue in 2012, 1 year after the beginning of this whole scandal. We sued to try to gain access to the results of that audit. However, DA Ron Moore argued that it was tied to this case involving Smith and that they could not be released at this point. The judge agreed, so we have been waiting. Now, Ron Moore told us last week that he would release an unseal of the audit results, which the SBI sealed for him, and this would all happen after Smith's sentencing today. So what we have also discovered as we've been following this case from the very beginning for you is that the district attorney said that he has no indication to believe that any of the evidence that was missing and this audit and the resulting investigation have impacted any cases. And in his words, he said he did not believe that any criminals had gone free. He did say, though, the audit has helped create a more streamlined and better filing system for the evidence room. We will find out more details about that once that becomes available. These are 15 volumes tied to this audit set to be unsealed. We do not have a specific time frame for that, but we will have a crew here today covering what happens in the courtroom and when the district attorney gives us the time frame for gaining access to that information. And of course, News 13 is your source for the details of that audit once it is unsealed. Reporting live in Asheville, Victoria Dunkel, News 13.